Hi everybody, Cori here. So I'm here to share my top 10 favorite books of 2019. Now I read a lot of books this year, surprise, surprise. So it was really hard to make this list, and if you asked me tomorrow, I might have changed it up a bit. But today, I'm gonna say that these are my top 10 favorite books of the year. So let's just get into it. Now these books are in no particular order because that would just be impossible, but first one I'm going to talk about is Beartown by Fredrik Backman. I read two of Fredrik Backman's books this year. I also read A Man Called Ove, and I absolutely loved them both. But because of my upbringing, Beartown takes the cake for me. This is set in a small town called Beartown, and this town has kind of gone downhill a bit, and they have hopes that their junior hockey team is finally going to make the finals, which they hope will bring investment back into the town. And then there is a scandal involving a sexual assault, and involves members of the hockey team and members of the community, and the story kind of goes from there. It is just a really wonderful book, all about what it looks like to live in a small community, and every single person in this community has importance and has power. And it also looks about, it kind of talks about the toxicity of hockey culture too, which again is a thing that I was aware of growing up, and I think this book does a really good job exploring it and showing you the good sides and the bad sides of having a hockey community. Fredrik Backman's writing is incredible. This is a translation, so whoever did the translation is also incredible. I just think they do a fantastic job. I am definitely going to read more of Fredrik Backman's works. I've gifted A Man Called Ove to two different people for Christmas this year. He's just a fantastic writer, and I totally recommend him, even if you're not necessarily into adult fiction. Now, another interesting thing about my list this year is 9 of my 10 books are actually adult novels. I only have one YA book on this list, and that is Love from A to Z by S.K. Leigh. I just read this book earlier this month, and I just loved it. Now don't get me wrong, I did read and love a lot of YA this year, but for some reason this one has stuck out the most to me. I really enjoyed S.K. Leigh's first book as well, which was called Saints and Misfits, but this one I think was just even better. It is about a Muslim girl who gets suspended from her school for being outspoken towards her Islamophobic teacher. So her parents send her to Doha to stay with her aunt and just kind of escape the toxicity of her life at the moment and get reset. Her parents are very worried about her outspoken nature. On the way to Doha, on the airplane, she meets a boy named Adam. So the other point of view in this book is from his point of view, and he is another Muslim teen who lost his mother at a young age to MS, and he has also just found out that he also has MS. And so he has dropped out of university, and he is returning to Doha and to try to tell his father about his diagnosis, and he's really struggling with how to reveal his diagnosis to the people around him. And it's about them meeting and potentially falling in love. It was such a wonderful book. It was obviously deals with a lot of difficult subject matter, but it was also very warm-hearted as well. It was just fantastic. I totally highly recommend it. Contemporary, again, is not usually my favorite genre, but this one just blew me away, and I'm so happy I read it. Next up, I have The Back of the Turtle by Thomas King, and this is another one that I read fairly recently, and it makes me just want to go out and read all of Thomas King's other books, and I will be doing that in 2020, I'm sure. This is about a man named Gabriel Quinn, and he has returned home to the reservation that his mother and his sister used to live on, which has been destroyed due to an environmental disaster, and he's dealing with, he's feeling suicidal and trying to end his life because the environmental disaster resulted from some of the research that he did as a scientist, and this inadvertently destroyed where his mother and sister lived. So he's trying to deal with the repercussions of this. The story is just really, really well written. There are a few different perspectives that kind of thread and come together throughout the novel, and you start understanding these relationships better, and it's just very, very well done. It also is a really interesting examination of community, and just the feelings of being connected to the land, and I loved it. It has this kind of almost magical element as well, and it was fantastic. I loved the way the story came together. I cannot wait to read more of Thomas King. Next up is a book that is also on Sally's list this year, and that is Severance by Ling Ma. This is probably one of the most nuanced and accurate look of what it is to be a millennial, and not in a way that is looking down at all. It really examines kind of the routine of day-to-day life and our relationship to technology and to each other in the modern world. It is a dystopian book, and it follows a woman named Candace Chen, who is a first-generation American, and in this book, something called the Shen fever has quickly swept the world, and it turns people into these, it's almost like a zombie, but not in a zombie in the way you would think. It's a zombie of routine. I think this is probably the way Sally described it as well. But basically these people go through the motions but aren't there. There's nothing, they're not thinking of anything. Like, they will start dialing the phone, but they're just punching random numbers, and they'll pretend to type, but they're not typing anything specific. And it's just really, really interesting. It's a quick read, and it was a book like no other I had ever read. And I think if you want to think more about what it is to be a millennial and our relationships with our phones and our computers and, you know, the screens that are absolutely everywhere all the time, definitely check this one out. It surprised me, and I'm not surprised Sally and I both put it on our best of the year list. Next up, I have a modern classic, and this one surprised me like no other, and that is The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. I'm so surprised with how much this one has stuck with me. It's, again, a lot of these, I think I say this about a lot of these books, but it's just such a unique kind of exploration of a different part of humanity. It's about a lone human emissary to a planet that he calls Winter, and on this planet the people have the ability to both choose and change their gender depending on different situations. So it's a really interesting look at gender roles and gender stereotypes and gender construct and what that does to people, what that does to humanity. I loved it. I loved it. Like, not only was it a great examination, but it was also a really great story. If you're looking to read a modern classic, this is definitely one you should put on your list. Next up is a book that I read really early in the year, and when I was going through all of my read books, when I read the title, I was like, yes, that needs to be on my top 10 list, because I think especially in BookTube specifically, I haven't seen it talked about a lot. Again, a lot of these are adult novels, so that doesn't necessarily mean they're not usually the focus of a lot of the people I follow, which is fine. But this one I loved, and that is An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. This is about a newlywed couple in the South, and very soon after they're married, Celestial and Roy are their names. Roy is accused of sexual assault, and he is sentenced to 12 years in prison, but he did not commit this crime. So after 5 years, his sentence is overturned, and he gets out of prison. So the story is really Celestial and Roy and their friend Andre, who Celestial got really close with in the time that her husband was in jail, kind of coming to terms with what life is now. Like, obviously they were newlyweds and they've just spent so much time apart, and there has to be decisions to be made, and it was a great story. It was a heartbreaking story, but it is definitely one that felt very real. Like, you felt for all of these characters in different ways, and what a difficult situation this was. If you're looking for some adult contemporary that has a bit of a harder hitting impact, definitely one to keep on your list. Next up is a series that I've talked about multiple times on this channel already, but I just loved it so much this year, and I've read all of the books that are released, and they are chunky. But that is the Expanse series by James S.A. Corey. This is a sci-fi series in which humans have colonized Mars, the moon, the asteroid belt, and beyond. So there's people who are Earthers, and people who are Belters, and people who are Martian, and it's just such a surprising read. It is an incredibly diverse story, but it follows our main character Jim Holden, and he is the XO of a ship called the Rosadante, and it follows, the whole series follows him and his crew, which is this found family, which is something I love, and how they age and they grow and they go on all of these epic missions and adventures together in each of the different books, and it's at times heartbreaking and at times heartwarming, and it's action-packed, and you just fall in love with every single member of this crew on this ship, and I was just really surprised by it. I haven't read a lot of space opera books, so going in I was kind of expecting it to be very technical and you know, mostly action with less heart, shall we say, and you get both in equal measure, and it's an incredible series. I've actually heard the TV show is also really good. As you know, I'm not big into television, but I did watch the first episode and I liked it. I say don't be intimidated by this series. It's wonderful, and I think if the word space opera intimidate you, try to put that aside because this series is so worth it. Next up is a novella, and that is The Monster of Elendhaven by Jennifer Giesbracht. Now this one I feel like I wouldn't recommend to everybody. It is gonna be a divisive one, for sure. It is gruesome, it is gory, it is gross at times, but I loved it. It is about a creature who has crawled out of this gross lake, and he finds that he is incapable of being killed. Like, he can be dismembered and he'll be fine. So that's obviously where some of the grossness comes in, but he meets this young magician who is set to take revenge against the people in the city, and they meet and form this kind of like sexual tension filled bond, and they're both deplorable, but you can't help but root for them. I loved it. I loved it. The blurb by Joe Hill on the front I think is perfect. It says a black tide of perversity, violence, and lush writing, which is pretty much it. This showed up on our door completely randomly from Tor, and I don't know why they sent it, but I am so glad they did because I loved this. Again, not going to be for everybody, but it's definitely one of the best books I read this year. Another one that was also on Sally's list, and nobody's gonna be surprised that I'm talking about, but that is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I had really high expectations for this book and was like scared to read it because, well, I didn't want to be disappointed, obviously. But I buddy read this with Karina. Sally also read it around the same time, and I just loved it. Again, another adult novel. It's very dark. It is definitely adult, and I know there's been a lot of controversy around that, but know this, you know, the content is not for younger people. It is about a girl named Alex Stern, Galaxy Alex Stern, and she has been recruited by Yale to be a member of this kind of these magical secret societies. There's also like a murder mystery involved, and it really explores, I thought it was really, when I was reading this book, I actually didn't know that the secret societies at Yale actually existed. I didn't find that out until after I finished the book, so that just added a whole nother level of, that was so cool. Darlington was one of my favorite characters, incredible. Yeah, like I said, this book just beat my expectations. You've heard of it by now. I cannot wait for the sequel. It was fantastic. And last, but certainly not least, and I think people are expecting what this book is going to be because I have not shut up about it since I read it, it's The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. If you like books about books, and who doesn't, this book is going to do it for you. Or I hope it does it for you. I shouldn't guarantee it. It is about a college student named Zachary. and he discovers a book in the library at his school, which he starts to read, and then he discovers it includes a story from his childhood. And so obviously this is very interesting. And this discovery of the story leads Zachary on this kind of weird quest to find out how on earth this possibly could have happened. It leads him again to a secret society, and he ends up in an ancient library beneath New York City that's whimsical and magical and full of characters and things that may or may not be real, and it's incredible. I'm kind of blabbering, but I know people love The Night Circus. To me, this is like even beyond The Night Circus. It is so good. The main character is also gay, which I don't feel like enough people have mentioned, and it has a will they won't they love story in here, and I just loved it. I just loved everything about it. I own 4 copies of it now because even the book itself is just stunning, and I cannot wait to reread it. This book is one that I think about all of the time. It's a beautiful story with beautiful words, and I can't recommend it enough. Alright, so those were my top 10 books of 2019. I read some amazing books this year, and it's weird to me that 9 of my 10 were adult novels, but that is just the way the cookie crumbles. I had a fantastic time. I cannot wait to see what I read in 2020. If you've read any of these books and liked them or didn't like them, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to chat with you about it. And if you like this video, give it a big thumbs up and subscribe for more. Happy reading, and thanks for being awesome. Bye!